1918, March 10, USS Cyclops, collier, left Barbados on March 4, lost with all 306 crew and passengers en route to Baltimore, Maryland. The incident resulting in the single largest loss of life in the history of the U.S. Navy not related to combat occurred when the collier Cyclops, carrying a full load of manganese ore and with one engine out of action, went missing without a trace with a crew of 306 sometime after March 4, 1918, after departing the island of Barbados. Although there is no strong evidence for any single theory, many independent theories exist, some blaming storms, some capsizing, and some suggesting that wartime enemy activity was to blame for the loss. In addition, two of Cyclops's sister ships, Proteus and Nereus, were subsequently lost in the North Atlantic during World War II. Both ships were transporting heavy loads of metallic ore similar to that which was loaded on Cyclops during her fatal voyage. In all three cases, structural failure due to overloading with a much denser cargo than designed is considered the most likely cause of sinking. USS Cyclops, AC-4, was the second of four Proteus-class colliers built for the United States Navy several years before World War I. Named after the Cyclops, a race of giants from Greek mythology, she was the second U.S. naval vessel to bear the name. The loss of the ship and 306 crew and passengers without a trace sometime after 4 March 1918 remains the single largest loss of life in the history of the United States Navy not directly involving combat. As the loss occurred during World War I, she was thought to have been captured or sunk by a German raider or submarine, because she was carrying 10,800 long tons, 11,000 tons, of manganese ore used to produce munitions, but German authorities at the time, and subsequently, denied any knowledge of the vessel. The Naval History and Heritage Command has stated she probably sank in an unexpected storm, but the cause of the ship's loss is not known. Cyclops was launched on 7 May 1910, by William Cramp and Sons of Philadelphia and placed in service on 7 November 1910. Operating with the Naval Auxiliary Service, Atlantic Fleet, she voyaged in the Baltic from May to July 1911 to supply 2nd Division ships. Returning to Norfolk, Virginia, she operated on the East Coast from Newport, Rhode Island, to the Caribbean, servicing the fleet. During the United States occupation of Veracruz in Mexico in 1914 to 1915, she coaled ships on patrol there and received the thanks of the U.S. State Department for cooperation in evacuating refugees. With American entry into World War I, Cyclops was commissioned on 1 May 1917. She joined a convoy for Saint-Nazaire, France, in June 1917. Returning to the U.S. in July. Except for a voyage to Halifax, Nova Scotia, she served along the East Coast until 9 January 1918, when she was assigned to the Naval Overseas Transportation Service. She then sailed to Brazilian waters to fuel British ships in the South Atlantic, receiving the thanks of the U.S. State Department and Commander-in-Chief, Pacific. The ship put to sea from Rio de Janeiro on 16 February 1918, and entered Salvador on 20 February. 2 days later, she departed for Baltimore, Maryland, with no stops scheduled, carrying the manganese ore. The ship was thought to be overloaded when she left Brazil, as her maximum capacity was 8,000 long tons, 8,100 tons. Before leaving port, Commander Woolley had submitted a report that the starboard engine had a cracked cylinder and was not operative. This report was confirmed by a survey board, which recommended, however, that the ship be returned to the United States. She made an unscheduled stop in Barbados because the water level was over the Plimsoll line, indicating that it was overloaded, but investigations in Rio proved the ship had been loaded and secured properly. Cyclops then set out for Baltimore on 4 March, and was rumored to have been sighted on 9 March by the molasses tanker Amalco near Virginia, but this was denied by Amalco's captain. Additionally, because Cyclops was not due in Baltimore until 13 March, the ship was highly unlikely to have been near Virginia on 9 March, as that location would have placed her only about a day from Baltimore. In any event, Cyclops never arrived in Baltimore, and no wreckage of the ship has ever been found. Reports indicate that on 10th March, the day after Cyclops was rumored to have been sighted by Amalco, a violent storm swept through the Virginia Capes area. While some suggest that the combination of the overloaded condition, engine trouble, and bad weather may have conspired to sink Cyclops, an extensive naval investigation concluded. Many theories have been advanced, but none that satisfactorily accounts for her disappearance. This summation was written, however, before two of Cyclops's sister ships, Proteus and Nereus, vanished at sea during World War II less than a year after their sale to civilian operators. Both ships were transporting heavy loads of metallic ore similar to that which was loaded on Cyclops during her fatal voyage. In both cases, their loss was theorized to have been the result of catastrophic structural failure, but a more outlandish theory attributes all three vessels' disappearances to the Bermuda Triangle. Rear Admiral George van der Ers suggested that the loss of Cyclops could be owing to structural failure, as her sister ships suffered from issues where the I-beams that ran the length of the ship had eroded due to the corrosive nature of some of the cargo carried. This was observed definitively on USS Jason, and is believed to have contributed to the sinking of another similar freighter, Chuki, which snapped in two in calm seas. Moreover, Cyclops may have hit a storm with 30 to 40 knot, 56 to 74 kilometers per hour, 35 to 46 miles per hour, winds. These would have resulted in waves just far enough apart to leave the bow and stern supported on the peaks of successive waves, but with the middle unsupported, resulting in extra strain on the already weakened central area. On 1 June 1918, Assistant Secretary of the Navy Franklin D. Roosevelt declared Cyclops to be officially lost, and all hands deceased. One of the seamen lost aboard Cyclops was African-American mess attendant Lewis H. Hardwick, the father of Herbert Lewis Hardwick, the Coco Kid, an Afro-Puerto Rican welterweight boxer who was a top contender in the 1930s and 1940s, who won the World Colored Welterweight and World Colored Middleweight Championships. In 1918, a short summary of the loss of Cyclops was listed in the U.S. Navy Annual Report. For a BBC Radio 4 documentary, Tom Mangold had an expert from Lloyd's investigate the loss of Cyclops. The expert noted that manganese ore, being much denser than coal, had room to move within the holds even when fully laden. The hatch covers were canvas, and that when wet, the ore can become a slurry. As such, the load could shift and cause the ship to list. Combined with a possible loss of power from its one engine, it could founder in bad weather. Cyclops had three sister ships, all commissioned in 1913, which were all ill-fated. USS Jupiter was converted to an aircraft carrier between 1920 and 1922 and was recommissioned as USS Langley. Langley was the first American aircraft carrier and was vital in developing United States naval aviation capabilities. She was converted again between 1936 and 1937 as a seaplane tender and redesignated as AV. 3. She was stationed in the Philippines in December 1941 and departed for Australia following the Japanese attacks on Pearl Harbor in the Philippines. On 27 February 1942, while ferrying fighter planes to Southeast Asia, she was attacked by Japanese aircraft and was hit by 5 bombs, causing critical damage. After her surviving crew members were rescued, Langley was scuttled by torpedoes fired by her escorting destroyers. USS Proteus was sold on 8 March 1941, became part of the Canadian Merchant Navy, and was lost at sea without a trace, probably in or near the Caribbean Sea, sometime after 25 November 1941 with a load of bauxite ore, for making aluminum. USS Nereus was sold to the Aluminum Company of Canada on 27 February 1941. She was lost without a trace after departing St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, sometime after 10 December 1941, with a load of bauxite ore, for making aluminum.